This is going to be an exceedingly long, drawn-out video with a lot of tangents, and you have been warned. Hopefully, this will be the last I will be saying on the topic. Hopefully, we can get everything out in the open to discuss, and then move on to happier things. Now, a lot of this information, most of it in fact, is technically public and has been discussed to death since October 2016. The problem is, said discussions have occurred in select communities and haven't been really expressed to the masses in a meaningful way, even though they talk about and affect those masses. So to pretty much everyone out there, this is a brand new topic, and it needs to be brought to light. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but please don't threaten or harass people over this. This is a discussion. It's been a learning experience for me every step of the way. Now, before we actually get started, I want to plug 4 individuals who have made amazing mods in the past. These people could use your patronage. If you go to patreon.com, you can find these people. Chesko, author of Frostfall, Campfire, Wearable Lanterns, and more. If you fund him on Patreon, you would be funding his coding of open-sourced projects on GitHub. In return, you would get access to his diary to see what he's been up to. Eleonora, author of some of the best housing mods in Fallout and Skyrim. For the love of Dustworth, you would be funding the creation of graphics, tutorials, and more, mostly her YouTube content. In return for certain payment levels, she actually sends you postcards. Any Seon, author of Apocalypse, Ordinator, Imperious, Sacrosanct, and so many other things, which are pretty much just a staple in my everyday Skyrim playthroughs. If you fund him on Patreon, you would be funding his return to college and living experiences there within, and in return, you'd be getting access to his Patreon blog as to what he's been doing. Finally, Ice Cream Assassin, author of The Legacy of the Dragonborn, a massive collaborative package between various mod makers. It is the centerpiece of both my Relic Hunter playthroughs. You would be funding the creation of his prototype board games that he likes to work on, and in exchange for certain tiers, your name would be listed on his site. Now, under Bethesda's EULA, that is End User License Agreement for the Creation Kit, it's against the rules to fund mod projects directly. But I think that these people have contributed enough as individuals that supporting their personal projects sounds like a damn good thing to do. So fund them. Support creators in a way that matters. Also, keep an eye on your favorite mod makers, because they too someday may decide to put their personal projects up on a crowdfunding site. Now that that's over, it's time to talk about something not so good. Can you imagine websites like 4chan or something awful back in the day? Not their modern incarnations, but the ones way, way back. Containing a group of people collaborating together going, we should coordinate copyright strikes against this YouTuber, or we should all report this streamer to get him shut down. Well, I can tell you that this behavior has occurred, but it didn't come from where you'd expect it. Have you ever been to nexusmods.com? It's a pretty cool website where your favorite mod makers can get their mods hosted there free of charge. In exchange, the Nexus displays advertisements on the website to support itself. I have a massive amount of respect for the creator of the Nexus, Dark One, and the amount of effort it took to create and maintain a website such as this. My respect for him only increased having seen how he deals with mod makers directly. The amazing job the website has done to preserve and prop up modding is second to none. I mean, really, why would anyone want to use the Steam Workshop or Bethesda.net for PC modding when a better solution like the Nexus exists? The Nexus is just superior to Bethesda.net and the Steam Workshop in pretty much every way. I certainly view the Nexus at face value as some of the best of what the modding community has to offer. Now, from the perspective of an end user, you go there, you download the mods you've heard about, on a YouTube video or in someone's collection. Alternatively, you can browse the top mod list, grab the things you like, and if you're really involved, you come back and you endorse the mods you really liked. The people who become extremely active tend to use the forums to communicate, offer feedback, coordinate projects. That said, below it all, there is a deeper underbelly to the site. Mod makers whom have gathered 1,500 or more downloads gain access to the Modders forums. Originally created to help modders coordinate their projects together, solve issues, and just in general pull together as a community without non-modders interfering, the forums today are a little different. So I'm sure some people here are viewing this video for the first time, and they don't know about the previous 2 videos as well as the live stream I've done. So let's go back and explain this timeline of events as I experienced them. So some time ago I was talking about Sisyphus, a mod maker, who created an article, as well as Tarshana's alleged lawsuit against the mod reviewer MXR. At the time, I didn't know any of the details, and this was all guesswork, this was all, third-party accounts, and a lot of it was wrong. I didn't even know that these modder forums existed. When I sought out initial comments from mod makers about these things, I was confronted with, "Oh, this has been going on forever, just let it die," and "Please stop the drama." This was brand new news to me. I don't know what everyone else was yapping about, at least at the time. And it was new to all the people who were viewing my video for the first time and were like, what the hell, this actually went on? Then came accusations like, "You just want to profit off of the drama." Well, I am profiting off of the drama. This video you're watching, even if you're watching with ad block on to quickly stamp that dislike button, you're inflating the video's views, watch time, and engagement score by hitting that dislike button, so thanks in advance. But joking aside, if profit was my main consideration, live stream donations, Patreon, a part-time job, and other considerations fill my required income. If I really wanted to profit, I'd just make more lore episodes or challenge another YouTuber's opinions. See Vinalic Puma Gaming, for example, on that one. If I wanted to go full shill and just make money off YouTube, I'd drop this tiny little niche. I mean, as much as people like to think that the Skyrim modding community is this massive thing, it's a teeny tiny little niche of YouTube. And if you are looking to make big bucks quick, you don't do this. You cover PewDiePie drama, trollololol Keemstar. But that isn't the case right now. Because I feel strongly about what's going on in a community that I have had a casual relationship with since Morrowind. It's because I care about the modding community, I care about YouTube in general, or should I say the visual expression of ideas, such as review and satire, and in general, I just don't like something being hidden like this out in plain sight where there's a good chunk of people who know exactly what's going on and are like, "Oh, this has been going on forever," when everyone else is like, "What the fuck?" You see what I'm saying, right? I want to expose this thing to sunlight and just let people form their own opinions. And yes, I am biased because I'm a YouTuber. Take that into consideration when you listen to what I'm saying. So, next in the timeline, I heard MXR's side of the story, which was fairly sparse. Not because he was holding back info, but it turns out he didn't know very much. While I think he's a really cool guy who plays an immature character on his channel, I would find out much later that he was, and it pains me to say this, a stupid kid. Remember, I watch his videos, and I'm like, oh, I missed that mod that came out. That mod I gave, I didn't care about? Looking at MXR's video, maybe it's pretty good. So it's not an easy thing to take someone I mostly agree with and say, "You done fucked up, son." But this situation pisses me off because he responded to me in good faith and here I am bad-mouthing him. But if I didn't include that, I'd be just as guilty as pushing an agenda as certain people want to accuse me of. But we'll get to the details between MXR and Tarshana later because I'm going to be going over the best hits, as it were. So, hold on. At this time, I was unaware Like, I thought MXR was in the right, Tarshana was in the wrong, and there was nothing in between at all. So, people contacted me with various pieces of information. Some of them I'd find out later were lies or exaggerations. Some of it was outdated information. I learned about the private modding forums having existed, and I was shown a few select posts, a dump of maybe 2 pages. But that wasn't the whole picture, and those with the whole picture still didn't want to come forward at this point. So I talked with Leonard French, a copyright attorney, before I even discovered there was an updated EULA to the creation kit, which affirms mod makers' rights of ownership, aka Zenimax's evasion of responsibility while still keeping modders on a tight leash via restrictions. This will be the core of the discussion. Although the discussion with Leonard French and I and Migrant thought, we discussed using pretty much everything we used using the EULA as a foundation was pretty much wrong, because the EULA has updated. However, everything else we discussed about fair use was pretty much correct due to the Lens v. Universal lawsuit, which turned fair use from an affirmative defense into a legal precedent establishing what is known as a non-infringing use. The court confirmed that fair use must, capital letters, must be considered. How this does and does not apply to the alleged lawsuit we'll get into later. The same day I had the conversation with Leonard French, my wife was sitting next to me on a couch over there, and she was getting bored. We were just ready to go off to vacation, but I went ahead and stuck around for an extra hour and a half because, you know, I'm talking with a copyright attorney and I don't want to piss him off. But it was a fun discussion. It was neither here nor there. It was more or less just an exploration with someone who knew a little more than me. Right after our conversation with Leonard French ended, my wife and I went off to vacation. While I was on vacation, various mod authors contacted me, some to admonish me. I received a couple anonymous death threats. I also get those lovely ones like, I hope somebody, 5-letter words starting with R, your wife. Then someone tried to rebuke me for not discussing the death threats Tarshana received on the live stream. I'm calling you stupid. You don't know what it's like to be on the internet. Death threats are bad, you idiot. The running issue throughout this is, modders good, users bad. But the reception I got from some of these modders are bad people too. Users are bad people. People are bad people. Just expect the overwhelming amount of humanity that doesn't agree with you to suddenly become hostile, vile trolls. Or, of course, in this case, some of them, hugbox residing ideologues who don't want to come out of their holes because it suits them just fine to spout their own ideals in a small, confined space where there's no one to challenge those ideals. Remember this. The right sort of people in life would never even think of issuing death threats. And the wrong sort of people wouldn't care even if you told them not to issue death threats. We all know death threats are bad. Get over yourself. Anonymity plus audience equals asshole. Eventually, however, while I was on vacation, multiple mod authors would come forth with actual discussions, not this, just drop it already, or we're sick of talking about it shenanigans that had been going on ever since I started asking questions. No. These people actually discussed it properly, providing much needed context, information, and background on this. It was nice to talk to people in the modding community without sticks up their butts for once. One of them confirmed to me that NMAS Entertainment support ticket to Tarshana gave her permission for the assets, putting into sharp question some of the things an earlier individual had told me prior to the podcast I did. So apparently Tarshana had permission, and this is my apology for suggesting otherwise. I was lied to. I was given details going back all the way to Morrowind regarding the modding community, from which people are still active in that community to this day. I interact with some of them on a regular basis. I host some of them, and I've done discussions with some of them as they build their work. I'm even a consultant for a couple of projects. So, speaking to groups of modders, they explained to me the early modding situation, and Rye's vision for Cathedral modding versus how everyone actually felt about it. It's nice when you can get a hold of some unedited history. It turns out parlor modding has and always has been the standard, aside from a few small circles and a few group projects who obviously had to share assets between one another. My opinion, having changed from having had several lengthy discussions, is I still think people who subscribe to the ideal of Cathedral modding, that is the people who go and say, my mod is free for all to use and base other mods off of, those people should be called out and praised. But no, if your mod isn't a patch or a supplementary mod containing none of the original, if it actually reuses and redistributes assets owned by someone else, you better damn well get permission first. And you know what? That's how the majority in the community have always been. Although a few small pockets of modders would lead you to believe otherwise and talk about the good old days. Yes, we all knew free to download and free to use is not the same as ownership. But there are people who are trying to rewrite history. They're trying to say that somehow back in the day it was different. They're wrong. Again, with the exception of small circles, hashtag not all modders. Hashtag not all what have you. So yeah, people offering their work in a cathedral fashion is commendable. But the kind of history people represent is a sham. Furthermore, the idea of the Skyrim modding community that it's now somehow breaking itself apart and it was somehow fine in, and we're gonna quote this again, the good old days, is a lie. Humans are emotion farms. Modders or not modders, drama happens. Drama's always happened. The divide has been there since the beginning. The modding community wasn't this special place where everyone was accepted and worked together. Although it did have pockets that could be described that way, those are cliques. Those are small circles. Very often back in the day, you'd have a disgruntled member of a group who'd leave the group, take his assets with him. Old forums, now no longer running, used to rage with 400-500 page arguments between modders. They'd have to temporarily ban certain members of their own community to restore order. They'd close topics. People even got thrown out of those communities. In short, everything people want to blame on Skyrim kitties still happened back in the day with Morrowind kitties and Oblivion kitties. This isn't anything new. And if you think fondly back to a time in modding when this never happened, you were just lucky enough and having so much fun you never noticed it was going on. And really, that's a good thing. If you want to go back to that state, go there. Ignore the drama. There's no reason to focus on the drama. Ironic that I'm saying this when I'm making a video about drama, but these are all things I feel are very important to share with everyone because they're misconceptions all over the place. People need to take off their nostalgia goggles, full stop. Next, I was contacted by members of the modding community who were big into the Oblivion scene back in the day. They don't work with the Nexus anymore. They directed me to various discussions on obscure forums about the lolcows in the modding communities. Out of respect for individual modders and what they do, I'm not going to show the list, as it's framed in a very trollish and spiteful way. It's clear that the people who contacted me of this group did not depart the modding community on good terms. Regardless of how tainted their bias was, I learned quite a bit about the various people whom I didn't even know existed in the modding community, as well as various bits of history and agendas inside the Nexus mod site. While I was able to dismiss some of what they said as just vitriol, they provided some information I'm inclined to believe. Information that put sharp focus on the reasoning behind certain people in the modding community acting in certain ways, why they refuse to believe or even discuss at all any alternatives to their ideology, why they judge people and label people as pseudo-intellectuals or armchair lawyers while they're doing the very same things they're accusing other people of doing, why they quote figures and statistics that no longer are available to be scrutinized to support arguments that they don't have any reason to be arguing. Ego. That's what it is. Ego. So I departed that sphere kind of you know, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore, but I do understand why you left. Finally, and this was toward the end of my vacation, several active members in the modding community contacted me regarding several threads in the modders forums on the Nexus. Some of them provide me with complete logs of the threads that were there at the time, and others provide me with little JPEG screenshots they took of how the threads changed, posts removed, so on. So whereas before I only had a tiny little glimpse into the modders forums, I was now able to see their threads in their entirety captured as HTML files. Why were mod makers begging me to let it die? Something that only happened recently, as 99% of people think? Well, to them, to the tiny box, it's been happening to them since October 2006. The forum dedicated to helping mod makers work together turned into a drama factory and targeted YouTubers. A thread titled "YouTubers Making Money Off Mods" was posted by You're Not Supposed to Be in Here, the author of the Somerset Isles mod.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.
Although he'd later edit a majority of his contributions into blank posts or just a dot, it was clear his original stance was calling for an attack on YouTubers who were making money off mods. The reasoning was the inherent unfairness of the situation. Bethesda had created a PaidMods system, which was a great idea, executed in the most horrible way possible. PaidMod systems exist right now for Team Fortress 2, Warframe, and several other games, and they are great. People who build assets for the games are getting paid right now. I'll get into paid modding systems later, but to sum it up, this was offered to mod makers and then taken away from mod makers. Resentment built up over the next year as Bethesda clarified their video policy. Zenimax Media updated their EULA to affirm loud and proud, you own your mods, period. No questions asked. Anyone who says, Bethesda owns your mods, well, you can point to the EULA that says the line ownership, explaining that you own them, and that Bethesda licenses them under your ownership. But in that very EULA giving you ownership, they take away your rights to profit off of said mods. So we've got all these mod makers who have been told, you own your mods, you have intellectual property rights on your mods, but you totally can't profit off of them. So mod makers who want to get Patreons or donations or things to fund specific projects, they want to kickstart a specific mod, they want to do all these things, they want to have lofty game design goals within the Skyrim engine, they are told, fuck you, metaphorically, by Zenimax Media. And at the very same time, they're looking over here, and YouTubers are getting advertising revenue for displaying mods they feel is a reproduction of their work. It is and it isn't. And this is something that's going to need to be set in legal precedent in the future, because we're going to need to affirm that people have the right to do video reviews of video games. Video games and mods are the same thing. They're a product that's put out. So there's no legal precedent regarding this. There is a legal precedent regarding fair use, but again, until we hammer out the video game videos portion of it into legal precedent, none of this is going to be established as completely defensible. So what do we have? We have resentment. These guys can profit off of it. These guys over here can profit off of it, but we can't. Why? We do thousands of hours of work, and this guy posts a video and he makes $5 off of what we spent thousands of hours doing. Yeah, he makes that $5 over several months, but still, he's making 1 penny when we made nothing. And that is the mod maker's perspective on this, is the inherent disconnect. So everyone in the thread in the beginning agreed that Bethesda was to blame, which is a misnomer, as Zenimax Media is now the prime licensor of the kit. And there's this distinction, a clear distinction between Bethesda Game Studios, Bethesda Softworks, the publisher, and Zenimax Media, the corporate overlords. The corporate overlords are the ones who are screwing you. Even though they know where blame goes on an intellectual level, a certain vitriol started to rise regarding the creation of mod reviews. That YouTube channels could exist, at least a couple of YouTubers could make a living off of covering mods, was simply too much. At no point was there a real civil discussion. It came down to arguments over fair use versus ownership. A hug box was created, an echo chamber as it were, repeating the same mantra: fair use is an affirmative defense and can only be proven in court. We have the right to take down videos containing our mods. Over and over and over, this repeated itself. Some people argued on the principle that they would never actually take down videos or advocate the taking down of other people's videos, but they felt the need to point out that doing so would be within the rights of a different mod author. While some mod authors argued for a test case where they wanted to take down someone's video and see what happens. Although later edited to remove said suggestions, a poster actually called for a coordinated striking by multiple mod authors to immediately nuke YouTubers from the face of YouTube. Yeah. Do you remember when I mentioned earlier at the beginning when you'd expect a less reputable site in years past to do that kind of thing? It was discussed amongst mod authors openly in the Nexus forums. Now, I'm sure you'd think a Nexus staff member's got to take care of that, right? That's not the behavior you'd expect from a civilized site. I mean, this is the sort of behavior that 4chan has been banning since 2015. No questions asked. So what kind of staff do you think the Nexus has? Well, to answer that question, I've got professional voice actor Wolvenrain to do a dramatic reading of a staff member by the name of Drake.
I'm fed up beyond threshold by all these people's shit. I'm way better off without them and their ilk having access to my works. I'm through with them, and if it also harms others who are not sharing their ill-minded thoughts and behaviors, then so be it. It isn't like the good ones ever do even a single thing to make me reconsider anymore. The harm coming from sharing with the public has far outdone its use to me at this point, and I'm done with it ultimately. YouTube reviewers have never been a thing when I started. We were coming along exceptionally fine without them. I don't consider them any use, not to me or people with half a brain anyways. I'm making sure my mods will never be very high up in endorsement sorted rankings or anything either, because those people who base their choice of mods on rankings or reviews frankly don't deserve them to begin with. And I'm really fine with such morons not being able to find my mods. My mods are not to be profited from in any way, neither by myself nor anybody else, unless it was specifically permitted by me beforehand. I may be allowing donations to me in the form of premium membership time, but this money will go to the site, not me, and I already have access to everything and will not gain a thing from this myself. And this is the primary problem here. YouTube reviewers neither ask beforehand nor will they take a no for a no. Personal experience from 10 plus years of modding. The money is more important to them than the continuation of publicly shared mods and the well-being of the content creators they so deliberately benefit from. And this, in all honesty, makes them the enemy, trademark, to me. The fear of the backlash that's inevitably going to come from them when you as an author open your mouth and speak up against them or even so much as ask for a thing, to me is absolutely no reason whatsoever not to do it. Quite the opposite, because if someone attempts to blackmail me or force me into something, he'll usually earn quite the opposite of what he was aiming for. They cannot harm me by driving people away from my mods, because I don't care about the single downloader more or less once the one person requesting their upload downloaded them and enjoyed. Every brain-dead moron who doesn't download my mods is a welcome thing to me, less hassle to worry about. Keep your dangerous followers away from my mods and it's appreciated. Raise your armies against me in my comments, and I'll make sure to report every single one of them until they're gone from the site in their entirety. My skin is so thick against intentional attacks you cannot even scratch it. You got no power over me or my decisions, and there's nothing you could do to make me do a thing you want. The harder you try, the more spectacular you'll fail. And if I'm ever fed up beyond threshold with all the ilk, my mod pages and me will be gone in a heartbeat, and I won't have lost a thing. They, however, will have lost a target and will seek another part of the community to destroy instead. In my own conviction and observation, the community will come along exceptionally fine, even better most likely, without the existence of reviewers and reviews, or even YouTube for that matter. Shut down that cesspool, for the world will be a better place without it. But I definitely cannot say the same about content creators and their mods. Additional site visits and advertisement money earned may be a beneficial thing in a certain way, but they must not be used as justification for the deliberate loss of authors and their mods in return, or soon there will be neither of it left anymore after all. For obvious reasons. It's dead simple. I create my mods, I share them with the public for zero benefit to me in return, only additional hassle keeping up my pages and maintaining support, and if you ever want to do anything whatsoever with them, be it reusing a mod of yours or even a review on a website or YouTube, bloody ask me in advance or get lost. And if I say no, that bloody means no, or I'll make sure you learn it, and if it ends my life. These simple terms of mine seemingly cannot be adhered to, so my decision is thus. The community is not worth the hassle anymore and can do without my mods. I decided so with Skyrim last time. Fallout 4 followed up next, and now my mind is settled. There will not be public sharing of my mods for any future games to come.
Although he disclaimers his posts in the signature line at the bottom, saying, "These are my opinions, not those of the Nexus," and that's all well and good, but the Nexus isn't just a community, they're a business. And at the end of the day, every website, every company, every organization is branded by the face of their employees or volunteers. That's the brand that the Nexus is pushing forward. That's the type of person with staff under their name in big other colored text. Let's discuss some of their top hits, and I'm paraphrasing with all of these. I might misspeak at any point, so don't take this as gospel. No one else, barring my approval like the Nexus, should be able to take my work and make money for it. Yes, I'm a big, mean mod author, and would tell them to turn monetization off on my work. This begins a trend, with Rainier carrying forward in this thread until its eventual closing in 2017. Hey You replied with, "This, oh so much this." It seems that Bethesda doesn't care if anyone makes money off mods except the mod author. Anyone else can base their career on it, and Bethesda just doesn't care. Arthmore, author of the unofficial patches, some of the best mods ever, was basically going to say the same thing. The real solution is to not stop monetizing YouTube videos, is to allow authors to sell their work. We're literally the only ones in the chain barred from doing so, and that's just wrong. Now, the reason I brought up these quotes is they were used to establish the founding of the room. This was the early consensus that Bethesda, although again a misnomer, Zenimax Media is the prime licensor, they done them wrong. This was a conversation as it was established in 2016, October. Months upon months before the Tarshana v MXR would become an issue. Eleonora would go to ask if mod makers would be able to copyright claim the advertising revenue, as many other companies do, rather than just take videos down. Shesri replied with the culture of fan worship regarding popular YouTubers, and feared that mod authors would be targeted by fans of those YouTubers. In this case, Shesri wasn't far off. The larger a fan base is, the less willing they are to reason. It's impossible for either a YouTuber or a film actor to control their fans. And as I said earlier, The right sort of people wouldn't retaliate at all, whereas the wrong sort of people would ignore anything the personality had to say on the topic, jumping right to their own conclusions. This is the way people work. Shezri would go on to state that after she dared speak up, after being targeted by a large YouTuber, now no YouTuber would cover her work. Having done some research, apparently she was the creator of the Old Heraldon mod, and there was a lot of shenanigans that went on during the PaidMods system. Now, the PaidMods system was something I was in favor of in terms of concept, but not implementation. Like Chesko and a lot of other reasonable modders, she was attacked and demonized entirely based on rumors, misinformation, and crazy people who couldn't see the system or who was behind it. I, for one, can say a lot of the people I had previously respected acted like total jackasses during the event. A person can be smart, but people as a whole are stupid. In the case of the PaidMods system, people were moving with tribe mentality. They started pirating, attacking, defaming people, and somehow they got into their heads that these were righteous acts. Those people can go fuck themselves. She was the target of herd mentality bullcrap, and it wasn't cool. It's a real shame some of the larger mod reviewers wouldn't cover her stuff anymore. I certainly would have had I been approached, but some of these people don't even know me other than being the jackass who's currently talking about drama. It's unfortunate, but what can I do? Let's move on with the thread. The next really valid point comes from Nexbeth, who brought up the valid point that modders can also be promoters. The very people who say it's far too easy to produce YouTube videos, those people who are saying it's too easy could be producing YouTube videos themselves with simple recording software, showcasing their own works. Nexbeth would go on to say that he would want some control over how his video was presented. He didn't want to see it coupled with sex mods or things like that. He leaves on that point just saying that it would be like mocking the mod. What Nexbeth doesn't realize is he's onto an extremely valid point that doesn't get brought up here ever again. Having discussed some of the details regarding the MXR case with another copyright attorney, this one who declined to be named, the topic of brand tarnishment was brought to light. You see, a reviewer has the right to fair use. And no, fair use isn't just an affirmative defense. Again, Lens v. Universal Music Corp changed that, and now it must be considered. But if it can be proven the reviewer isn't just reviewing, but is actively working to tarnish the brand, then damages can be proven. This could occur, for example, if someone is misrepresenting a wholesome family product as something sexual, thereby tarnishing the brand. MXR Mods comes to mind, in this case, because he uses big-titted, skimpy-clothed female character models for his reviews. Even though I personally like sexy women, and I like skimpy clothing, based entirely on aesthetic basis, context matters. In the context of a review, this could be seen as brand tarnishment. I mean, think about it. Someone's trying to associate your brand with sleaze. The problem, of course, comes in proving damages and assigning a monetary value to a work which Bethesda has forbidden you from profiting off of. In short, it's a pain in the ass. But it's a matter of fact that MXR Mods could potentially be in the wrong for placing big-titted, skimpy armor women in the same, not videos, but the same scenes as regular mods. And I'm aware this is a massive can of worms. I'm aware this is something that it flies in the face of fair use and what should be. And this is something that, as far as I know, from my limited perspective, is true. And it needs to be discussed so that it can be debunked or affirmed by someone who is obviously more intelligent than myself. This is what this whole series of videos has been about. A discussion to not only bring these events to light, but also to figure out what is true and what is false. The people who are like, oh, it's been talked about forever, let it die, they aren't helping to bring this to light and to bring it to a definitive conclusion. That's what I want to see. And if there is no definitive conclusion, at least this whole event will be preserved in the mass consciousness so that the majority of people will know it happened, as opposed to this obscure, tiny sample size of people who know it happened and just aren't sharing it with anybody. But no, brand tarnishment is not what the Tarshana v. MXR thing was about. We'll get to that later. It's just something that was a valid point that was not brought up again. At this point, many mod makers were scratching their heads trying to explain that YouTubers provide a service to mod makers by showcasing their mods. Other mod makers came back with a, no, they are exploiting our mods. They're exploiting mod makers. Fair use got thrown around. The fair use is an affirmative defense and has no value until proven in court. The reply got tossed back. And then Ice Cream Assassin, the author of the Dragonborn Gallery, he suggested profit sharing. Now, my personal take on this is I'm fine for it with Let's Plays because Let's Plays are not reviews. Let's Plays are a full-on re-performing of a video game, or in this case, a mod maker's work in its entirety. Something that doesn't actually fall under fair use. As such, profit sharing for that would be fair. Whereas with reviews are protected, and furthermore would be a conflict of interest regarding the relationship of a viewer and the creator or business owner or whatever have you product that they're reviewing. But explaining that and why that's true would take a lot more time than I've allotted here, as would be defining product, because something you receive for free is still a product, regardless of how you want to define it personally. As mods are something you install onto your hard drive and then customize, they don't actually fall under the same purview as if you had, say, pictures or a video up in a digital art gallery. The Nexus is not a digital art gallery because the object is actually downloaded, customized, and then implemented into another product. Thereby making it a modular product. It's not a piece of art that is just observed through the visual medium or through the auditory medium, making it stand apart, again, from a picture or a piece of music. And it has the potential to actually damage your existing Skyrim installation. It has the potential to be stupid, or a waste of your time, or have a misleading mod page. All of these things are true. Therefore, a review is a review. Whereas a Let's Play is a reproduction. So what makes a Let's Play a reproduction? Well, again, that would take far more time than I've allotted, but the long and short of it is that you are performing the work without critical analysis from beginning to end. That's what makes a Let's Play not fair use and a review fair use. Either way, let's circle on back to the thread. Rainier came back with something akin to, even if reviews are fair use, they're inherently unfair, as Bethesda, again misnomer for Zenimax Media, has given them ownership but not the ability to profit. The author of Pirates of Skyrim, Big Biz Kit, originally thought that reviewers would ask him before reviewing, but they didn't. And he said it's not their fault the system is flawed, don't hate the player. Big Kiz Kit's attitude is actually that of the vast majority of modders. They don't care. Like, they kind of expected to have people asking for permission, but they realize that having the reviews only benefits them. And then you have the hardline people who say reviews are fair use, who are a minority, and you have the other minority who are standing up for the principle of modders' rights. So you have two minorities which are very vocal, and then you have the silent majority in the middle who just want to make mods and enjoy their game and don't care if anyone else talks about them. Sometimes they're happy if people talk about them, but they don't really respond to the reviews. They just go like, time to make a next mod because it's fun. And that is, in my opinion, the most reasonable way to go. So then the discussion starts getting fun. Mod makers have an assumption that if they created a Patreon, it would be taken down. This assumption came from various mod makers who tried to kickstart their mods and do Patreons for their mods. They weren't doing Patreons for themselves, they were doing Patreons for the mod itself. Bethesda took quick action and took it down. Bethesda took down the Kickstarters too. They pretty much just said, you cannot fund a mod. Luftarin, for those of you who don't know, was a mega mod that a group put together and was working to finish to be basically a Skyrim expansion pack. Something maybe twice or three times the scale of Worm's Tooth or Falscar, by adding a brand new city and dungeon to the game. Now, this wasn't mentioned in the thread, but I've seen the creators of Super Mario Bros. Z and other crossover projects get their stuff taken down by Nintendo. Those very same people put a new patron up in the author's name saying, I'm making videos, instead of, I'm making Super Mario Bros. Dragon Ball Z, and there was no problem. Nintendo doesn't give a shit because they're funding the person's personal projects and not the mod, not the game, not the intellectual property that belongs to Nintendo or any other company. Likewise, Shoddycast was trying to fund their lore series directly through Patreon. They called it their Elder Scrolls lore series. Well, Bethesda had a word with them, and now they're just funding the channel. My point here, however, is that people can be funded. Mods can't. It's important when creating a Patreon not to base it off someone else's work, but base it on yourself. My Patreon, for example. You can go to patreon.com/thehawkeron, and you are funding my YouTube channel, my live streams, and the various other things I create. And I'm grateful for it. Now, going back to the thread, Nexus Dark One, the owner of the Nexus, pretty much said, wouldn't the easy way to be setting up a Patreon for creating assets in Blender, Audacity, insert tool here of choice? Yeah. This is a textbook example of Dark One being practical. In my head, as I was reading this whole 300-page thread, every time Nexus Dark One talked, I had in my head the guy from Killer Instinct going, because whatever just delusional sentiments people were having, Nexus Dark One comes back with the practical point. This is what is true and practical. There it is. The one who runs the Nexus is a prudent person. This being the Nexus problem, my respect for him was, in the beginning, it shot straight up as I saw him interacting with these people. He's a good person. When Rainier said, sucks to be me because 95% of my mods are script-based, Dark One immediately fired back with, I've set up a Patreon to help fund the work of scripted code in Notepad++ for video games. That's scripting right there. I make my scripts in Notepad++, port them into the creation kit. You leave out the port them into the creation kit part. The scripting work is what's being funded. So back to the thread, they built this narrative that YouTubers were specifically the ones who reviewed mods without talent. They're hacks. They're exploiting everything people talks about. Every time fair use is brought up, it goes back to the affirmative defense, prove it in court, or the moral argument of, they didn't ask us, it's our work. Which I understand. I've actually authored a few things myself. But that's neither here nor there. Back and forth until the creator of the discussion, the author of the Somerset Isles, stepped up and told his story. Now, talking about his story here isn't really relevant to the thread as a whole, but it's important because he's the creator of the thread. He's the one who started all this. So this frames his state of mind in all of this. Number one, I think he's using Google Translate because his posts were barely legible in English. But the gist of what I got was he created mods just for him and his girlfriend. It was a shared hobby. Later, he saw a Somerset Isle mod on the Nexus that was abandoned. People were saying, oh, you can never actually capture the true essence of the Somerset Isles, so it's better it was just, never made. And he felt sad about that, so he decided to enlist some voice actors and get an actual Somerset Isles mod going. He worked hard on it. He worked so hard, he stressed out, he pushed himself too hard, and he started to hate Skyrim as a result. Even though it wasn't polished enough, he just wanted to be rid of it at this point. Just get rid of it. Like, I don't want the responsibility of having to push this out. I just want to be done. So he published it, even though he knew it wasn't polished enough, and then dismissed all the complaints and went to do other stuff. So he goes on to explain that he never asked BroDuel or MXR to review his mods. They both did anyway. He claims that they're both failed reviewers, that they got paid while showing his mod in an incorrect and misinforming light. So my takeaway from this, oh boy. When his mod first came out, I was approached by multiple people who were involved in the project or who were heavily invested in the project, and they were like going, please, please check this out. And when I did, my honest, unfiltered opinion would be, as Somerset, this mod is utter shit. As some unnamed island like Worm's Tooth or Falscar, it's okay, I guess, although the quest log is kind of misinforming. It's the areas are empty. It feels lifeless. A lot of the NPCs don't have dialogue. It feels dead, and it feels tiny. And the city of Alinor looks like shit. It's a bunch of mud huts. These are like these are teeny little islander savages, not a glorious province of the High Elves, the kind that would have built the Crystal Tower. No, these are just like a few wizards and then a bunch of medieval farmhouses and stuff. At least that's my memory of it now, going back. I could be mistaken, I could be misremembering it at this point. But when I quietly, on a small live stream of like 40 people, like I didn't want to make a review. I played it. I told the people who were asking me, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I told them what I thought, and they fired back with, but this was made by mostly one guy. And I said, now imagine if this were made from scratch by a team. Because I deal with group projects in modding all the time. I've consulted for a few in the past. I'm consulting for one right now. Today, after I finish recording this video. So my way of respecting the mod author was to not review the mod. Was to not cover the mod after my initial review. To more or less forget the mod existed. BroDuel and MXR failed mod reviews? Excuse me, that's bullshit. The mod maker here was overambitious, and rather than own up to that fact, it seems like he's throwing a fit. In addition to consulting work, I'm also providing marketing for some of the mods when the time is right. Now, I won't pull my punches if I feel like some of the mod is subpar. You know, if we've agreed to market the mod, I may decline to market it after all. I'm not going to evangelize parts of a mod that I think aren't good. Basically, you couldn't pay me to no-fully lie in a review, so why do you think I'm going to do it for free? I'm not going to sugarcoat shit. That's just not how it works. He did a subpar job. He didn't want his mod reviewed. It got reviewed. He got angry. The conversation continues in circles for countless pages until some individual summed up the thread in the best way possible. I'm mad. Here's the solution. I don't want a solution. I want to be mad. And then burns the paper with the solution on it. That sums up the entire thread right there. The discussion pretty much disregards fair use, escalates with one person saying we should start DMCAing all the mod reviews that would put pressure on Bethesda to correct their modding terms. The thread ends abruptly for some time and is picked up again when MXR reviews the floating market mod. Here's where things get interesting. Now, I've refrained from posting any of the actual screenshots of the thread up until now. That's because I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia of something that is 300 pages long. However, this is relevant to the discussion. So Tarshana explains that her rationale is honor. That she actually wants to honor the EULA as it is presented to her in the creation kit. So, in other words, what she's saying is she needs to honor this clause that more or less says, you shall not allow anyone to do this. Now, I would argue that the language doesn't include YouTube videos, but remember, the entire operating premise of this thread has been that making a YouTube video of a mod is replicating the actual assets, that is replaying the art form in its entirety. It would be something akin to going into a private gallery and taking pictures of the artwork there and then selling those pictures, which would be infringement. And if this were a Let's Play, I would completely agree with her. However, a review is something a little bit different. So the order of events is MXR reviews the floating market. Tarshana sends a copyright takedown strike. MXR counterclaims. She affirms the claim is valid. And then he appeals. The moment you appeal a video, it starts a countdown timer within which you have to prove that legal action is being taken. What usually happens at this point is the copyright holder will allow the time to tick away and the video will eventually be reinstated. That's what usually happens. Now, in some cases, such as large companies such as Universal or Nintendo, very often it goes into a pre-trial state. And when both sides get their lawyers together, they agree to drop it and the video ends up getting reinstated. No court case actually occurs after a quick meeting with YouTube's legal and the lawyers. That's what usually happens in these cases. Alternatively, and this is why the companies come back with their lawyers in the first place, is because they're hoping that the legal threat would be enough to just keep the video down. In Tarshana's case, her attorney apparently contacted the YouTube legal team, and the YouTube legal team, with her attorney, contacted Machinima. Machinima being MXR's network. Now, for those of you who have seen the Gaming Wildlife video on Machinima, I've talked to enough people in real life to know that that video is mostly accurate. They don't give a fuck about you. At least that's what my friends have led me to believe, those who have dealt with Machinima. Now, you have to understand something about establishing a court case. Lawyers need to be as hyperbolic as possible and to ask for as much as possible at the beginning. This is because the defense will come back and say, no, 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 and then eventually they will meet in the middle where the judge will grant something. And it's kind of like a negotiation. It's a series of issued notice and response, issued notice and response. That's how the beginning of a court case starts. And you'll find that there's no actual court involved other than someone reviewing the records and going yeah or no. But what happened at this point, from what I can tell, what I have gathered, it still might not be representative of the truth, but it looks like MXR listened to what Machinima told him. So what Tarshana's lawyers asked for in the initial, remember, they have to be as hyperbolic as possible in order to get maximum results. Tarshana's lawyers asked for an injunction against all of MXR's YouTube channels for the duration of the case, reminding Machinima and everyone that the duration of a case is usually about a year. So Machinima came back to MXR and said, your YouTube channels are going to be shut down for a year. You should drop this right away. We don't want to spend money on legal. In fact, you're going to have to spend the money on legal. Machinima didn't actually respect him, apparently. And, you know, I don't even know if MXR is a managed network. And if he is, I don't think they brought any lawyers to defend him at all. MXR apparently decided he wanted to fight this. And then when he was told, well, his channels are going to go down, he folded. He gave up. And that's both funny and incredibly sad. But it speaks to his naivete and his ignorance this is why it pains me to say this, because I'm a fan of MXR, but he, number one, didn't retain a lawyer of his own, apparently, as far as I can tell. He listened to what Machinima and YouTube told him instead of actually figuring things out for himself. Had he actually retained counsel, the counsel would have told him no, and we're going to force her to prove damages. We're going to force her to prove that if they do not take the channel down, that there will be massive damages. Now, she could be trying to use the channel and all its contents as evidence, but that can be accomplished with a different type of court order, and MXR's counsel would have simply said, well, we're willing to turn over all records right now. And through a various back and forth, a way in which MXR's livelihood could be maintained would be established while still giving them what they need. In short, MXR was legally bullied. He was bullied by lawyers. Might makes right. And you know what? Looking at it now, looking at the way I do, I think, like, this is my personal opinion, that what Tarshana did was despicable. But, and I'm saying this was never argued in court. This was never argued by her that I know of. But quite frankly, he was tarnishing her brand by showing big tits in the same area as her lovingly crafted cookies and capes and things. Had it been a proper review, I mean one without the sexualized content, perhaps I would be still supporting him now. But I'm looking at this right now, and people say that MXR's channel only exists because of the titillation. I can tell you that is wrong. Otherwise, Shinji would be one of the biggest YouTubers right now, and titillation is pretty much his thing. So I think that MXR's personality is what brings it forward. I think that if MXR abandons mod reviews entirely and just does, I don't know, let's plays of stuff, his personality is still going to shine through. He may take a dip in terms of how many views he gets. You know, he may take an income hit. But I think that MXR could exist as a YouTuber regardless of what he covers, because he carries with him the tool set to be successful. The mod makers are not the ones propping him up. I mean, he started out his career as MMOX review, and he was going to review MMOs. He changed to mods because they were fun. And that's what most of us do things for, is because it's either fun, interesting, or important to us. In the case of all the mods I've been covering, in the case of most of the stuff I've been covering, it's mostly due to, it's fun. You know, when I do Let's Plays, when I do my live streams, it's fun. Now, when I do discussions, like with mod makers, did one with the Fallout Redefined team recently, I'd say it's interesting. And when I do a video like this, it's important to me. So what ended up happening with Tarshana and MXR is more or less MXR didn't know shit. He's an ignorant kid, and he has a mortgage most likely. He likely spent most of his money, and then this happened right in the middle of the adpocalypse. By the way, I can tell you right now, without giving specific numbers, I had like a 10% hit. I don't know. Either way, I don't require advertising revenue to exist as a YouTube channel. It's good. It's very good, and that's why you'll see a mid-roll ad during this video, because it's very good. But ultimately, I don't know what to make of MXR's continual, well, it's getting worse. I think it's getting worse because of his sexualized content. And I think that if he kept his attitude but removed the sexualized content, he'd still get views. I think that anyone reporting his videos because of the sexualized content and advertisers pulling their ads, and as a result his CPMs go down, 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 that's probably because he's doing sexualized content. I mean, if that's what he really loves, then he can do that, but honestly, it seems silly. So, Tarshana more or less won this because MXR didn't as far as I can tell, didn't retain counsel. Machinima doesn't give a crap about him, as far as I can tell. And that's about it. Now, if you go to MXR's Social Blade, it says he's not with Machinima. I assure you that third-party tools for other networks will absolutely confirm to you that MXR is a part of Machinima. And MXR's off-channels are also part of Machinima on Social Blade, so... you know, anyone who says that he got kicked off his network, that's wrong, because, let's face it, Machinima's just proved that they aren't going to do shit to help him. They aren't going to do shit. They're just going to take a percentage of his money. That's all they want. They want his money, and they want to give him nothing. That's, again, but whether that's true or not, I can't say, but that is the image they presented to me through their actions during this case. So MXR did a quick recorded message saying he agrees to settle out of court, and that's all the involvement MXR had. MXR didn't know anything. He proceeded to make the stupidest choices possible during this case, and then he ended it before it even began. And I can't blame him. I mean, really, he probably shouldn't have even appealed it at that point. He should have just been like, okay. And the reason he refused to talk about it is because he's afraid other modders will do the same. In fact, a guy on the forums named Mator, he's the guy who made Mod Picker, I still haven't had the opportunity to test it. People have been going back and forth. No one, by the way, has satisfactorily, after I asked earlier in another video, and I announced that I had been accepted to the Mod Picker beta, no one has satisfactorily told me why Mod Picker is bad. They're just like, oh, keep sucking Mator's dick. Or, they don't respect the rights of mod authors. These generic statements. It's going to destroy the modding community. Mator is an asshole. Like, I just keep hearing constant defaming and all the things, everything that the mod authors say the mod users do, the mod authors are doing to Mator. They're spewing vile hate at him, and they're never satisfactorily explaining why I should dislike Mod Picker. I've logged onto it once. I've tried it. It looks pretty good, but I need to test it more thoroughly. And then I'll have an idea of whether or not I can recommend it to people. And before I make that actual review video / recommendation, if someone can actually bring me evidence that Mod Picker is a terrible thing, I might include it in the review. But I don't think that anyone's interested in that. I think that people are interested in just their vitriol all over the place and standing on principle instead of giving me facts. So, Either way, I got horribly sidetracked. Mator said, if you were to take legal action against a YouTuber for reviewing or featuring your mod, I guarantee you shit would hit the fan. Would it now? I can't say that shit hit the fan. I would dare say it kind of sat in its own little hug box, and I think that MXR got scared, because as Shizri says, I assure you, we would stand up with the mod author that was being targeted by the YouTuber fan base. We would close ranks and YouTubers would find themselves facing a lot more shit. This is the same person who, you know, I was kind of sympathizing with her on the old Heraldon thing, because the people just, they went overboard in that paid mod system. Either way, I'm just gonna put that on screen, those quotes there, because that is just something special. Very, very special. I think that the only one who was scared of that was MXR himself. MXR doesn't want to talk about it. MXR is afraid that his business, as it were, could be shut down by other mod makers. And yes, I feel shitty talking badly about a guy who I'm a fan of. But it seems like he wouldn't have won this case representing himself. And he wouldn't have won this case with Machinima acting as his agent. If Machinima has any kind of legal, if Machinima has any kind of power of attorney over MXR and his channel, get out, man. Get out, man. Machinima, from what I've gathered, from what limited things I know, Machinima isn't good for you. Machinima isn't good for anybody. They don't give a fuck about you, and they want to avoid any expenses whatsoever. So, having gone over all that, do I still personally think MXR would have won? No. No, I don't think he would have won. If he had started with a lawyer to begin with, if when Tarshana's lawyers came to his network, if his network didn't respond, because keep in mind, he doesn't have an obligation to respond to a notice the same day. The fact that there was an actual back and forth in the same day is just mind-boggling. When someone sends you a legal notice, you sit down with counsel and you discuss it. Holy fuck. I can't express my just shock and awe that this occurred over a 2 or 3 day period. That this whole thing occurred that quickly. You do not respond right away. Yet you have to respond within an acceptable time frame. But you have time to go retain a lawyer, go down to their office, talk with them about it, gather evidence and related materials for a defense, and then respond to the legal notice. But he responded like that, or Machinima responded like that. I don't know. But either way, the fact that this whole thing was able to speed along in 3 days shows gross incompetence on MXR's part, and a might makes right Tarshana victory. Had MXR actually done what a reasonable individual would have done, which is to, again, retain counsel, sit down, discuss. If not even to retain counsel, then to go to a lawyer's office and pay him like $80 to just review the documents, to review the case, and be like, well, you can retain me if you want to go forward, but I recommend X or Y, is what the attorney would say. And yes, like $80 to $300, somewhere in that range, is all you need to get a basic legal consultation. Especially if you're in an area that is overbloated with lawyers looking for small jobs. Now, a legal consultation is not the same thing as retaining a lawyer, of course. Considering MXR's posted videos about buying his new house, about, buying furniture for it, and so on and so forth, I don't know that MXR is fiscally responsible, and therefore he probably doesn't have a large amount of savings, which would go far to explain why he wasn't able to adequately defend himself. But yes, if it were me in his position, and I received notice from YouTube, that legal team, that they wanted to sue me, I would say, please forward this to my agent for service of process. I would give them the address. And once my agent for service of process got it, I would respond in kind. That's how you're supposed to do it. And that's why this whole thing is just, it's a clusterfuck. It is a clusterfuck. And honestly, on principle, I want to say I still support MXR. On principle, I want to say reviews are fair use. But in reality, holy fuck, you can't win a case like that. Just no. Do some freaking research. And don't trust your network. Either way. So, my takeaway from all this is that back in the day when the internet was new, The Simpsons was a popular show. Not like today where it's an animated carcass of its former self, but during this time, people created like these little Simpsons fan sites. In order to protect their intellectual property, Fox sent cease and desist orders left and right, like fan sites take it down, fan site take it down, so on, so on, so on. This was but one of various examples of companies protecting their various IPs. What Fox and the others didn't realize is these people weren't claiming to be the owners of the IPs. They were fans recognizing the Fox's ownership and celebrating their favorite things. In sending the cease and desist orders, by taking down these fan sites, they damaged their own brands. They took goodwill, encouragement, and what was essentially free advertising for their brand and turned it into resentment. They alienated their own fans. This didn't last long, however, as these companies aren't stupid. And when things start to affect their bottom line, which they did, they now, for the most part, support fan sites, as long as they don't reproduce content. The argument that mod makers want to make these days, at least the ones in that thread, is that if someone's showcasing a mod, it is a complete reproduction and therefore in violation of their rights as a copyright holder specifically, and they wanted to make this analogous to going to a gallery, taking photos of paintings on the walls, and then selling those paintings. That's what they want to make it analogous to. So either, one, if it's a product, it damages their brand. If it is a private art piece, then there is no brand other than the artists trying to assert control of their art. The problem is that they place their art in a public space. They want to frame the Nexus as a private site, but anyone can sign up there without any monetary investment. They simply sign up, they download the mod. It's that simple. It's in a public space. Once you place your art in a public space, it may be photographed and reviewed without your permission. In short, if you treat it like a brand, you're being self-destructive, and your brand doesn't deserve to live. And if you're treating it like a piece of art, well, you've just put it into a public space, and therefore it's up to review, even if the price tag is $0. But again, Tarshana, using the word honor repeatedly, she loves the word honor, apparently. Her ability to take it down. Her ability to keep it down. Her ability to get a lawyer to act on her behalf, thereby bully MXR's network into capitulation. But the thing is that had it actually gone to a courtroom, MXR didn't talk under oath. It didn't go to court. But if it had, MXR would have probably lost because of how he dealt with it in the beginning. Fair use is important, and this is something we're going to need to fight for in the future. It doesn't really matter to me if mod makers want to control their mods. It kind of sucks to be told, no, you can't make Let's Plays of this. But once a mod is put out into a public space, it becomes subject to review. We're going to have an actual court case. This Tarshana MXR thing, this wasn't an actual court case. This is a case of legal bullying. All I can do is shrug my hands and say, someday there will be actual legal precedent set forth. And I just pray, I really pray, that legal precedent is set by someone far more competent than MXR or Machinima. Because this disgusted me. Legitimately. But the Nexus, and the big reason why I made this video, why I put this forth, why I presented this, why this needs to be talked about, the reason for it is because there's a problem here. There is a forum that is technically public, but only certain people can access. It is a contradiction. And they discuss people. They discuss situations. They have been openly hostile to a large portion of the internet. And this is a problem. And this is something that the internet needs to acknowledge, understand, and then move on from. But at no point can it be buried. And now I leave you with Woven Rain to tell you a little more from this staff member.
At Sherzy and others, why don't you help me out here, folks, by posting those links of your own memories or records in the meantime? After all, it's you who've been the targets of their attacks, not me, and you know way better than I what happened, when, and where. Of course I can't talk to the casualties here, the lost ones, for they obviously won't respond. But those two you know likely better than me and what happened to them from first-hand experience and talks from back then. Only links will shut them up. They made that abundantly clear by now. So let's have at it and bury them under proof until they either do shut up like they claimed, Or, the actually more likely scenario, we'll prove their words don't mean a thing and will continue to fight the facts instead. But then at least everybody will know. But I see this topic has gone downhill yet further again in my absence. Great. The more enemies of authors show up and spout their nonsense inside here, the less I feel bad about never again sharing my mods with any of these. All this legal talk and the wrong claims of how fair use quote, would work, unquote, from the opposition, even completely ignoring the reasoning from an actual copyright judge I posted a couple of pages back for why, in most cases discussed inside here, fair use actually does not apply at all. Mainly it's about the talk about, about the unlicensed use of footage and resources, i.e. our mods and assets. Really has just confirmed my belief that my approach is actually the better one, as much as I would love to set an incident by suing one such nasty, undesirable YouTube reviewer into financial bankruptcy like right now, if just to shut you up. By a huge margin. Every remaining mod of mine that is found to be reviewed in a video on YouTube without my permission being asked beforehand is a gone one. The review remaining only a dead link anymore, and the time and work invested into its production wasted, leaving a note about why it was removed and who to thank for it, then never looking back again. Additionally, from now on, every mod of mine that I, at what time ever in the future, find to be reviewed or talked about on Mod Picker, you guessed it, also is a gone one. The same surrounding terms and further measures as above apply. No mod I'm no longer leaving up for download will ever be a loss to me, as it was never an actual win to share it publicly to begin with. You can bitch all you want about that. It won't change a thing. No review, public talk, endorsement, ranking, rating, or whatever else have you that led to more people downloading my mods will ever be considered a, quote, service, unquote, by me. If anything, then more people downloading my mods means more work for me supporting them and catering to them. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate it for what others gain from knowing about my mods. But if you now attempt to use it as a weapon against me, I hate to break it to you, but no group, clique, or community will ever have any power over me or be able to force me to do anything they want, but I don't. I can always just go away and would have completely nothing at all lost in the end. I sure as hell can't say the same about others losing me through without lying. So that is that. Reviews equals used as weapon against authors equals bad. End of story. You killed their last remaining worth and value. And last but not least, if I ever truly decide to leave the scene completely and for good, it will be for people like Mador and their ilk. It's a first for me naming names and an incredibly rare exception, but it's warranted this time. If those should truly some highly unlikely day be the majority, like they claim, then it certainly will be no loss for me to no longer be around. At rest of vocal opposition, please try to actually read the post you're replying to before you start typing nonsense next time.
So let's close this video up, shall we? First of all, I think that obviously mod makers have a right to do with their mods as they please. They've been given ownership of it. And if someone told me, no, your novel uses a lich, and, Dungeons & Dragons has liches, so you don't get to do with what you want with your product, I would be pissed. Worse off if they told me I couldn't sell a novel because it contains this one fantastical element that is used by another one. I would, again, be furious. So I can understand where these people are coming from. The fact that I own intellectual property, and as a result can relate to these people. Although if someone reviewed a novel that I wrote in a bad light, I'm thick-skinned enough to just go, okay, not for everybody. In fact, I get negative comments about my videos. This one obviously is way too long. It could be summed up in 5 minutes, couldn't it? I don't care. Whilst I believe that I should be able to control my works, I also affirm the rights of those who want to review my works. At some point, the law is going to have to square with what is a full reproduction and what is an actual review. You can't ban video reviews in their entirety. You can ban certain kinds of video reviews, but that's a different matter. Ultimately, this is going to have to go to court, and someone is going to have to set legal precedent. If the person is smart, after they issue the appeal, they will then seek proper legal counsel. I can't stress this enough. Don't listen to your network. Don't listen to YouTube. Get a lawyer. Even if you don't retain a lawyer, just pay for legal consultation as a one-off before you move forward. This is important. Now, a message to all the mod makers out there. I think we've fallen off the bandwagon. I think that you were on the right track at the beginning of the thread. Zenimax Media has given you the rights of ownership, but then in the same breath is restricting you. Zenimax Media, I do not believe, gave you those rights because you deserve them. Although you do deserve them. But I think that there's no altruism in their actions. I'm almost certain of it. They don't want the responsibility that comes with ownership. They're allergic to responsibility. This was made abundantly clear during the PaidMods fiasco. There was a lot of misinformation going around regarding the PaidMods fiasco. People want to blame Valve over it. Listen very carefully. When you do business with Steam, Steam provides the hosting, Steam provides the credit card transactions, including dealing with chargebacks and stuff like that. Real pain in the ass. They handle all of that. And in exchange, they take a certain percentage of every transaction. Knowing that, Bethesda went into partnership with Valve in order to sell mods. Remember that Valve is currently selling mods for Warframe and currently selling mods for Team Fortress. How do they do this? Well, the existing PaidMod systems, as they stand, use curation. I'm going to use Warframe as an example. When you post one of your mods to Warframe, it goes to the Steam Workshop. People can review what you've posted, and they can decide whether they want to see that in the game or not. A thumbs up, thumbs down system. The result is that whatever gets the most thumbs up gets pushed to the top of the list and is reviewed by the company first. 80% of what is submitted but voted for is actually rejected by the company, either for not fitting the theme or for various other reasons. Technical reasons. Oh, this wasn't done well, for example. It looks cool, but it wasn't done well. So they will reject your mod based on that purpose. And then it goes back to the drawing board. The ones that are accepted get implemented into the game as full DLC objects. You can buy them in-game using real-life Steam Wallet currency. There is a cut between Steam, Digital Extremes, the company that runs the game, and you, the author of the mod. This is the way a proper and measured paid mod system works. The mods are made into official DLC. Even if we wanted to go to the open market that Bethesda wanted, we would still need some level of curation. Curation does a few things. Number one, we make sure that no one's stealing mods. Number two, we make sure that everything is mostly compatible. Number three, we make sure that the mod is up to a certain level of quality. That is what curation does. Valve, when entering into cooperation with Bethesda, established all the tools that paid modders could get, including a full curation suite through which Bethesda could approve or decline of the various mods. At the end of the day, Bethesda rejected Valve's plan and said this can only go forward if there be no curation. This was an explicit requirement. In other words, quality standards were thrown out the window by Bethesda because they're allergic to responsibility. That's the same reason you own your mods. Bethesda is allergic to responsibility. But they want their cake and eat it too. So someday in the future, they're going to throw the PaidMod system back up. Absolutely. I have no doubt of that. Arthmore has no doubt of that. No one has any doubt of that. That's what Bethesda.net exists for. It exists so that mods can be sold. I'm almost certain of it. And this time they won't have Valve breathing down their necks saying, you should really curate this, you should avoid any legal problems and make sure that this is all done above board. Bethesda doesn't want any of that. They don't want to deal with it entirely. They want to push any legal responsibilities on the owners of the mod. With ownership comes legal responsibility. That's what they pushed on you. They haven't pushed control on you. If they gave you real control, real ownership, you'd be able to sell your mods. Instead, they gave you ownership in name and in responsibility. And people who view my what if Skyrim was good, what if Oblivion was good, what if Morrowind was good, what if Elder Scrolls Online was good, they watch my various thought experiments, and they say, this is awesome, why don't you make it into a mod? Why do you think I don't make mods? Why do you think I just consult with mod teams and talk with them and, you know, promote their stuff? I used to be very active with the hammer and level tools for Doom, Quake, and Half-Life. I wrote Quake C code to fix other modders' problems for my custom server so that we could have a bug-free experience in Quake. My skills have mostly atrophied since then. It's been years, but I could pick up the torch again. Why don't I? After everything I went over, why wouldn't I want to be a modder? I've been accused of agendas, pushing this or that, but really if it just gets too irritating, I'll go do other things. There's a big wide world out there, if on YouTube, then on the internet as a whole, or in real life. I don't have to pigeonhole myself to one thing. And contrary to popular opinion, aside from Bethesda Game Studios, the actual game studio, I have very little respect for Bethesda Softworks, the publisher, and I have almost no respect for Zenimax Media, or its subsidiary studio, Zenimax Online Studios. All I gotta say is if you're a YouTuber and you're looking to cover mods, you're doing it because it's interesting, right? It's quite possible that some of the modders don't like you, just on the face, which is insane. They act against their own best interests. If you're a mod maker, ask yourself why you're putting mods out in the first place. Don't you make mods for yourself? Why do you need to release them at all? That's my argument. My argument is, if you make a mod for yourself, why do you even release it? A lot of my mods have gone unreleased, or have only been used in private servers. So I ask you again, like, what's your motivation for it? My questions to the community are as follows. Please leave a comment with what you think about this whole situation. Please leave a comment if you are a mod maker and you want your mods covered. Leave the name of your mod here. Even include a Nexus link to your profile so we can know that you are a modder who wants your stuff covered. If you are a modder who doesn't want your stuff covered, tell us why. And finally, if you harbor these terrible fears about Mod Picker, that, you know, it's going to destroy the community or something, tell me why. Like, actually express it in more than just a single defamatory sentence. You know, give me a nice paragraph or two about why we shouldn't trust or use Mod Picker. And to Bethesda Game Studio. And finally, to Zenimax Media, whom I respect less and less as time goes on. What the fuck is with this EULA and this contradictory YouTube agreement? You set this up. You set this in motion. What's going on here? Think about that. Now, as for my videos, keep an eye out for some stuff rolling down the pipe pretty soon. I definitely want to review the new Prey. I definitely want to talk about a few other issues that are completely unrelated to this. And I really want to start propping up mod projects, engine projects, things like Daggerfall Unity or Open Morrowind or Tamriel Rebuilt or Skywind or Beyond Skyrim. I want to start talking about the large projects, the things where people actually come together and unselfishly help each other. Anyway, there's a lot more on my list I haven't covered, but my point here is that we're pretty much on the edge of the Morrowind expansion pack for Elder Scrolls Online. There's a lot to talk about. I just got back from my vacation, and I really hope at some point soon we can put this drama behind us. Still, it needed to be exposed to the sunlight. People need to know about it. Thank you all for watching. Check the links on screen for more content. Check out my live streams on twitch.tv/thehakaran. Either way, I will see y'all next time.